Hello and welcome to the Business of the Business podcast. I am your co-host, JP John Paz from the Two-Man Power Trip. Of course, joining me is the financial genius himself, the pro wrestling financial genius, Mr. Lavi Margolin. Lavi, how you doing today, sir?
Hey, I'm doing well. For those that are listening on the podcast, Happy New Year. For those that are experiencing this possibly on YouTube, depending on when it drops, I hope that you have a good New Year upcoming. But either way, it's a time of major and exciting change for the Business of the Business podcast on episode 162.
Yes, a lot of changes going on here, Lavi. Why don't you get into the first, I guess you could say change, if you will, a little update to the show.
Yes. So, as we mentioned last week, we transitioned from our um, official business podcast banner. We are now under PW Ponderings. We are the official business podcast of PW Ponderings. It's actually extra exciting for me because PW Ponderings, Chris and the whole team there, they helped me get started in this crazy world, meaning that around 2015, maybe even a little bit earlier, I had seen a posting that under the PW Ponderings umbrella, I think it was ROH World, that people could submit some articles to be considered for the website. And that had been something I had been thinking about, that I wanted to write about wrestling, write about the wrestling business. I'd been thinking about it, but I didn't want to put it on like message boards or something like that, which I wasn't sure who'd be reading it and what the response would be. I wanted to put it out in a more public forum. So that really gave me the opportunity, allowed me to gain confidence and grow into, one of the reasons that we're doing this here. If you've never been to PW Ponderings, it's an awesome website to learn about independent wrestling, especially wrestling that isn't spotlighted as much as WWE and AEW, really in line with how we do things. And some of the things that you should look for are the week in women's wrestling, wonderful coverage across the gamut of that side of the industry. And something that's more timely, I know Luis Perez of PW Ponderings out there for Restival, and they're going to be having 11 events over just a few days. So we know that there's going to be coverage like no other. So check that all out.
And you used to write a bunch of different things for them, right? I mean, the women's wrestling this week in women's wrestling is that true?
So that I had written about, my focus was on Ring of Honor at the time. So the week in women's wrestling is something that I wanted to highlight that's currently on their website.
Oh, okay,
That
cool.
just in terms of something that's more evergreen, as they cover so many results. Whenever you go there, whenever you listen to this, you'll see some amazing results that no one else has or no one yet has. So rather than mention that, because there's so many new results, I wanted to highlight a couple of things that are evergreen that people should really look for.
Now let's get into some big time news here. Very interesting stuff. We were able to finally meet in person. We had some nice dinner, and then we headed over to Madison Square Garden, and it was packed. What did you think about the WWE Holiday Show at Madison Square Garden? I know you had a little bit better seats than me, but still, I had some pretty good seats.
Yeah, we did it, John. Interestingly, we both went in the same section. Sometimes when I've sat all over the garden, as you mentioned, you have too, and sometimes I keep going up and up and up and up. But
Yep. Oh,
your
yeah.
seats, I believe, were in the 100s. Mine were on the floor. I just because I don't happen to get the chance to go out as much. When I do go, I like to do it up. So I got section 6, which was cool. Yeah, it was amazing to see the garden packed. One of the reasons that I really enjoy the holiday show is that you really get the casual fan and the families, and you can really experience things through their eyes. There was a guy, I don't think it was you, John, but somebody not too far from your section that was sort of like an internet fan and was kind of like yelling out AEW sucks and whatever, kind of like being annoying. But for most people, like it was sort of like whatever the catchphrases were, whatever was being fed to them, and I mean this in a very positive way, whatever was
Yep.
being fed to them, they were eating it up and like ready to like celebrate the entrances, celebrate, things so much. What do you think about the return of CM Punk?
That was great and got a huge pop, obviously loudest pop of the night by far. They were actually chanting for his name during a few of the matches beforehand. So he was definitely the most over guy, definitely the most popular guy. I noticed his merch, very hard to get, very scarce. I saw the return of Punk MSG shirt that was very rare to get, selling for upwards of $100 and more on Facebook Marketplace and eBay and the such. So I guess anybody that was there and, it's all for capitalism. They took the shirts away from some true, some fans that would really want it, and now they're selling it for hundreds of dollars on eBay. But that just shows you how popular CM Punk is. I mean, geez, his shirts, T-shirts from a house show were selling for a couple $100. It's like pretty crazy. Somebody was saying to me, cult-like following. They kept saying cult-like following. This guy's got like a cult. It's a cult. It might be because, man, they had 11,000 tickets sold last year. This year, they figured 11, 12,000. We'll sell it. We'll set up for that amount, and they kept expanding, opening up more seats, Like, okay, official sellouts about 16,000, and we'll stop there. And he sells out all the tickets. So, man, and I liked the match too, and I liked his performance. I thought it was good. I love the old school style. A lot of the new school stuff where they don't have psychology, they don't sell, they don't try to draw heat. I hate that kind of stuff. So a lot of what he does is drawing heat. He's getting Rhea Ripley involved. He's getting Dominic Mysterio booed out of the building. He just was a master of psychology, if you will. So I really enjoyed Punker and his return. I just love the pop too, because you never know. Sometimes the MSG crowd, sometimes they could shockingly turn on you, but not this crowd. They were great.
Yeah, it was really fun to see, and I had been a CM Punk fan for a long time from Ring of Honor. I think I've told this story before on the show, but the first Ring of Honor show I went to was a bus trip run by Mike Johnson, now PW Insider. And when we pulled into the Rexplex before getting off, we got a guest come on the bus, and it was CM Punk with the hand wraps and the X's, and there was a kid. I think he's Mittens now. It might have been someone else, but I think it's somebody known as Mittens who was dressed as him. I was like, who's this guy? And who's this kid dressed as him? And I didn't realize till later. And then I saw the show. I was like, whoa, that's amazing. So huge fan in Ring of Honor. Love that run, like sort of like his end run in WWE. Then kind of like, I wouldn't say I was the biggest fan in AEW, but it was a really cool thing to see. Some other things that I wanted to note, was, just in terms of course, how many sometimes the sum of its parts doesn't equal sort of like the results. So I mentioned a few weeks ago, like with Impact, people back on a like a promotional poster from 2015, and now you look at it and you're like, look at all these people that are like huge stars, and some of them were then, but like it looks even bigger today, like a Drew McIntyre, Bobby Lashley, LA Knight, but it was different. Yep. But in WWE now, you see these like factions and alliances, and they're actually making the stars like bigger than they are individually. Of course, you have the Bloodline, but you have like Rhea Ripley's, group. You have all these different groups that are really over, and really filling out the card well. Now, one tag team, I know, like I'm really looking at it with fresh eyes. Of course, I'm familiar with them. I've seen their matches over the years and so on. But like to me, and I might be like overstating this, like Chelsea Green and I shouldn't call her Dewdrop, right? What is
Piper Niven?
Yes. Pepper Nevins, to me, they are like a huge like star team waiting to happen. Maybe they already were, and I like missed the boat or whatever. But like, just the way they complement one another. Like, I'm a big comic book guy. Like growing up, like it seems like this like super villain team up where they're both so different, but they complement each other so well. And no shade to the champions, I'm just not familiar with them. they just in that match, they just didn't seem to have much. Whereas like Chelsea and Nivens, like they were just like, huge stars.
And Chelsea actually was the most over the match. They were cheering for her. They were cheering her name. They were actually booing, yaying when she was getting beaten up. So she was getting over as a babyface there too. They loved her. Even she wasn't doing anything babyface like. They just love her act. So I think she's a future star, probably even a single star for sure. But going back to Punk for a second, highest grossing, and I got to mention this, highest grossing televised event in WWE history. So the biggest house show moneymaker ever, the return of Punk after 10 years to the Garden. To the Garden, Vinny, to the God.
I think what'll be interesting is if people, well, I think for pro wrestling it would be actually very hard to do. Like sometimes you'll go back and you'll be like, okay, how many tickets did Star Wars sell? And what were ticket prices in 1970, whatever? Yeah. And then you look at it like today and be like, what's really success? But pro wrestling was often thought about as like cheap entertainment. Like even in the mid 90s when Knicks and Rangers tickets weren't cheap, but WWF was cheap. Like it was like, right, the Azard show, like $12, $15, and $20 seats. $20 was a great seat. So even if you were to say that's $65 today, whatever it is, still you wouldn't catch up. So it's being treated as we talked about a little bit of funflation, where entertainment has gotten much more expensive. So that's something to think about. But also to think about, Madison Square Garden has gotten more expensive to book, right? And WWE doesn't use it that much. So I know that there's certain costs for television and pay-per-views. So that might be a reason why. But like just generally, they come through Brooklyn a lot. They come through Newark, but not as much as the Garden. So when they're there, it has to be really impactful, and they have to charge for it. A couple other notes from me was the ages of the performers. A lot of the top stars were in their late 30s, even into their mid 40s, which I have no issue with, especially being among the demographic. But it feels a little bit different. I know WCW got slammed back in the day for that. To me, it's not about like the age. It's sort of like, can you go? But it's really indicative of how long it takes to pick a performer. I believe Conan has talked about this. Like right when I was in the locker room, it was men. I think somebody, we've seen breakout stars in their late teens, even people in their early 20s, and each could be harnessed. But like sometimes it is that maturation process and finding the right balance on this. And finally, and a very small thing to some people, but I think of note, in the show.
Yes.
When I got the reminder about going to the show in my email, it had at the very bottom the PBR, the professional bull riding, which we talked about last night. And a couple of times during the show, they put it on the screen that PBR was coming in January. And this is Endeavor, right, which spun off TKO Endeavor synergy. So a little thing. We'll curious to see if there'll be like more of a footprint. I don't think it would have gone over well if they like came out to interview a bull rider or something like that. I don't think people would want to see a bull, walk down the aisle or whatever. But interesting to see how they are utilizing that opportunity in a light way, which makes a lot of sense. Let's say I don't think most people noticed it, but if you got 400 people to buy tickets because of that, then that's like a big win.
Absolutely. I think it's funny, though, the PBR synergy stuff. People are like, the hell is this? Why is there so many commercials for bull riding and at MSG? But hey, I guess it's popular in some demographic. But overall, though, I really enjoyed the house show. I enjoyed the bull rope match with Cody and Nakamura. The tag match with the Judgment Day and Uso and Sami Zayn was good. And Seth Rollins versus McIntyre was good as well. So good show overall. I was pleasantly surprised with it. And Omos got a little bit of a reaction there, squashing R-Truth.
Yeah, there's something to that giant thing, right? Walking through the airport. I remember years ago when the Wyatt family, like I had a good seat then too. Not every time, but I had a good seat then too, where it was an aisle seat, and I remember like the Wyatt family walking down. And I think this is Braun Strowman before he was like active much on television. He was more like accompanying them, and you just like look at him, and it's like, whoa, there's something about that. So even if there's a limited potential for an interaction, you never know when it clicks for somebody, and it could be the biggest deal in the world. But there's something to that, and that was like a fun little segment. And I will admit, like I texted you, John, like to me, Drew McIntyre in my mind, and I'm sorry for this. I know in no one else's mind anymore. Just 3-man band. I can't get past that. I even went to the Evolve shows where he really broke out, and
Yeah, me
and
too.
um,
Yep.
and I had no issue with him there, and I enjoyed it. But like to me, like I can't see him as a main eventer, and I'm sorry for that. I know. I should get past that.
I got a very important question for you, though. Is cable TV still mainstream exposure now?
So taking an article from our friend Gavin Bridge, um, the Fast Master, who was writing mostly focused on a very different topic in terms of our fast channels. Hopefully, Gavin, I'm not misrepresenting this, but our fast channels sort of taking away from cable television viewership. So I'm not looking to solve that today, but based on some of the data points that we discussed last week, but not from us, about television viewership, Gavin brought some interesting points aboard. One of which was that there there are 62 cable networks that have an average of less than 150,000 viewers watching live in prime time. So, right, like when we think of pro wrestling, pro wrestling viewership that's under 150,000, depending on the network, we often think about as quite low. So imagine that there's 62 cable networks of different varieties and different types that have low viewership. So when it's less than 150,000, is that mainstream, right? That's something to really think about. So between 1,000 and 49,000, the closer to 1,000, of course, is BN Sports, which averaged 3,000, was 25 networks. Between 50 and 99,000, 22 networks. And then growing, so that's 47. And then there's doing some quick math, about 15 more that are between 100 and 150,000.
Ooh, I don't know if that's I don't know, like a sign of the times they're moving too fast, or that they're moving to streaming, which is now getting commercials anyway. It's like I wonder if times are a change in here.
Yeah, so that was sort of my premise, and I didn't delve into the article as deeply as I wanted to yet from Gavin, so I don't want to like start dissecting a thesis, a theory, before knowing all the facts. But I think it could, and one of the theories Gavin looked into it in terms of like talking to some of these fast station owners or managers, that they do some comparable ratings to these numbers in certain buckets. So that is one of the things, but I think there's so many different things, right? So many different ways to consume media and content, even social media, that I don't think there's a way to directly correlate to something like fast. I think fast is one of the ways that's chipping away cable TV, but I don't think that it's the main way.
It's not affecting football, I'll tell you that much. Whew, my God, some of the ratings for these football games were nuts. But as far as maybe a little bit of fast, or some of those channels, the Pluto channels, great streaming channel, they have something maybe that surprised you a bit, right? Or maybe they didn't. Maybe CW surprised you.
So I have to look into this a little bit more, but I know that Pluto had a special on WoW that was looking into Genie Boss's ownership, sort of like a behind the scenes thing as opposed to a pro wrestling show.
Right,
So
more
when it was
interest in there.
quickly announced that, like the morning of, that the CW, meaning the network, not the app, of the CW would be having a WoW special and talking about the ownership and so on of Genie Boss. I assumed that it was the Pluto special. I have to look into that to confirm that. What was interesting about the special, of not many interesting things about it from what I watched, and I think viewers will agree from the data that I have, was that it was Entertainment Tonight presents WoW. So it was sort of
Wow.
like it was a very very light look, like sort of like maybe comparing like an in-depth novel or analysis to something that you'd pick up like while you're checking out the groceries at the supermarket. So it was
Yeah.
closer to the latter.
Like, hey, it's Billy Bush here. We're gonna look at G Bus and wow, yeah, one of those types.
Exactly. Hopefully no hot mic or anything like that.
Oh
But
yeah,
but yeah, there was announced and it was a one-off special. So we have ratings. First, it was interesting. It was like one of those weird things where one of these websites that covers it, they linked to Wednesday night. So I was so excited, and then I clicked on the link, and it showed the different shows, but the fields were empty. So thankfully, Brandon Thurston to the rescue in the DMs. He told me that ratings look like they'll be delayed to the following day. So by the time you listen, you could probably find them. But I do have the fast nationals. So, and again, I wouldn't make like too much of this, but we could like learn a little bit of lessons from it. From 8 to 8:30, 240,000 viewers. Adults 18 to 49, 0.04. Number 5, meaning number 5 of 5, meaning of the 5 that they consider English language broadcast networks, it was 5. Now, the story, though, is that once you get into 8:30, it was 0.14 million. So 140,000. So from 240,000 to 140,000. That's a pretty big attrition number.
yeah.
So what does that mean ultimately? Perhaps not much, but one of the things that I would think about it is that if NXT isn't requiring exclusive on the CW, CW sees somewhat of a match of pro wrestling. We know that they've had a lot of dance partners and a lot of dating. The only one that they married thus far, was NXT. But one could imagine WoW in some form sort of slipping into the CW and, of an hour a week if there's non-exclusivity. So if this was a test to see like, well, what's the interest in WoW from the CW audience? Not much. Now, there was I don't know when this was acquired, if there was the chance to promote it at other points, but just seeing the audience that tried it and said no thanks, that's something there. But it's also not the WoW television show. It's sort of like, sometimes WWE has those specials on Fox when it's like, what was it, CBS or whomever has the NFL on, right? And there's like the game that's going against it, so they can show something. So they have like a light special. So you can't really like judge it for much, but that's sort of what it indicates to me. But also, our friend Nick Hausman was commenting a little bit when I was sharing some thoughts on this. So what I said was, this also makes a one-off type special about Billy Corgan's wedding featuring some NWA guys feel like a viable option on the CW. Nick said, I'm told it's a full season, meaning the NWA show, with just one episode about the wedding. It may be a running story through the show, though. And I said, perhaps it would be a quiet summer drop pre-NXT. And Nick said, maybe. Question mark. I really don't know what's going to happen with it anymore. I think it may just and then I said I think it may just appear one day, which is kind of the history of non 1 or 1A wrestling brands, meaning that like we barely had any time for this. It's a long time till I think October, right? CW doesn't mind picking stuff up and giving it a chance if they've already invested somewhat resources, time, or whatever it is in the NWA, and there's this pilot that includes or a season, a short season that includes Billy Corgan getting married. Like, it might drop one day and then be there, and people might not notice it, and then it's gone. So I wouldn't completely close the door on the NWA.
That is interesting because I was like, "Wow, Billy Corgan's wedding? Is that gonna be like, yeah, like they filmed it? What's going on there?" So that's definitely something to keep an eye on. Also, another thing to keep an eye on. I don't know, Brandon Thurston, our buddy, always does a good job. What's going on with MLW and maybe a little bit of legal stuff going on?
So the case is closed. Given the facts of this situation, that MLW, not that they say would be compelled to, but they cannot bring this case again. They cannot sue again given the same facts. I think, if WWE were to match with them in a few years, it doesn't foreclose them of being able to do it again. But meaning that, as Ben said, the judge signed the order today dismissing MLW versus WWE with prejudice, meaning the case can't be relitigated. This was basically a formality after WWE and MLW gave notice to the court on December 11th that they come to a settlement. MLW originally filed an antitrust. The court received and reviewed the party stipulation for dismissal with prejudice. Based upon the stipulation, it is hereby ordered that the above captioned action and plaintiff MLW Media LLC's claims are hereby dismissed with prejudice, with each party to bear its own costs and attorney fees. So, of course, the hanging question is, how much money was exchanged? We don't know. As we talked about last time, we'll only learn one by what MLW does going forward, and they've been more active in the field in terms of announcing shows, which we may talk about in a moment. Booking Matt Riddle and so on. But what might give us some insight, and I don't know if they actually have to disclose the actual fee, is when TKO reports if there's there would be a reference that the case was settled, but I don't know if necessarily they have to give a number, and there might be some sort of confidentiality clause. Maybe some people can dissect the financials to sort of determine the number. So that'll be something curious next time there's the opportunity to file. So I'm looking at MLW's upcoming schedule. No surprises from last week, but just to review, on January 6th, they'll be back at 2300 Arena, as well as on February 3rd. On February 29th, there'll be the show in New York at the Melrose Ballroom. And March generally is their Blood and Thunder show. Cage Match has it scheduled on the March 12th, and on the 5th, so on May 11th, MLW Azteca Lucha show at Cicero Stadium, one of my favorite places to watch MLW on television, especially when it was hot with Contra, some of that action. They had announced that it was some of their fastest selling tickets in a number of years, which may be true, but it didn't look like that many tickets, had been moved.
How about New Japan Pro Wrestling? I was pretty shocked to see Hiroshi Tanahashi, his name pop up as far as being a president of the company. Is this true? Is he really the president? And what kind of impact may that have on the United States?
Yeah, he's really the president. Bushi Road is a public company. New Japan announced this on their website along with some other executive moves. So to dissect sort of what it means for New Japan business overall, maybe a little bit out of my purview. It seemed clear that they had been struggling in some ways, so change is good, but change hadn't been too far in the past. It's always interesting when an active star gets the book, so to say, or becomes the executive. Maybe, the two most applicable examples would be Triple H and Inoki. Right, with New Japan, and Inoki for and Baba, of course, concurrently, and then ending, of course, before Inoki. That was quite successful. When it's done, where the public sort of knows who's the head, like Tanahashi, again, correct me if I'm wrong, he was still one of the main eventers. So for him to get a title shot and win the title and celebrate that again, if that were to be in the cards, it would be like a little bit awkward, right? Like he's also in the business suit. So I'd assume, I know that he's still going to be wrestling. I assume he'd be taking a little bit of a step back there. Hopefully, I don't think they do as like the hokey type of angles where it's like you're the executive, you're holding me down or whatever sort of thing. But I'm most curious in terms of their strategy moving forward internationally, especially in the US and North America. Tanahashi has been here a number of times. He even started doing, smaller shows. So he has, made some connections. He's aware of the market. He's seen it, at its peak in Madison Square Garden. He's also done shows, smaller shows, right, in Philly, in Queens. So curious to see how that continues moving forward, and what his relationship is with Rocky Romero, who's really been at the forefront of things here in America, and I'd imagine it's quite strong. But that'll be apparent over the next year. I would say 2024 will give us greater insight into that, especially after the San Jose show, to really see like what they do following that.
Let's talk about Game Changer, one of our favorite promotions. What's going on with GC Dub?
So, Game Changer Wrestling. So, to give a picture of their upcoming shows, I was looking at some of their ticket maps. So, Atlantic City, December 30th and 31st. Tickets, as far as I could tell, were moving actually very slowly. Sometimes you'll see that in Atlantic City, less so, sometimes in the winter months, especially, but less so in these end of the year shows. As we're recording this, like a couple of days before they're set to take place, you could still get in the second or third row 10 or more seats. So that is not looking great. They've already scheduled their return to the Showboat March 9th and 10th. As we talked about with Brett, like, right, the Carousel Room was a really special venue. It looked great on television. Now they're in the depot, which, they've jazzed it up a little bit, but it's a bus depot. So it's not the same appeal. Chicago with Thalia Hall is sold out. So I actually, Brett reminded me on Twitter. We had a little bit of information sharing there, and I had asked about the trajectory in terms of, was it Ali that really led to this, and he didn't attribute it specifically to that. He said that there was just 100 tickets left at the time, that some of the bigger names that were highlighted that he felt were helpful were Andrade, Maki, and Cardona were already announced for the show, but Ali helped to push it more across the finish line. Now in Columbus, Ohio, when a show is like a few weeks out for Ring of Honor, I don't like to specifically say slow, but looking slower. That there is 10 or more seats in Columbus still. In Tampa, let's see here. Tampa, it looks like there are 2 dates. I just have a screenshot of one of them that was moving fairly well for them for a show that's about a month out as we record this, a little bit less than that. They had almost moved 3 rows deep, and there was a 4th row that was available. Zula Fatu, am I messing that up, John?
Nope.
Zillow Fatu. So as he sort of gets out there a little bit more, that's certainly a unique attraction, as the bloodline is on everyone's forefront. Ukrainian Culture Center, let's see. That one is almost up to the 3rd row. They've been doing really well there, so a little bit far out. Arizona has been doing very well on February 4th. That was something Brett had attributed to some of their fastest moving seats in a while. Fourth row ringside, when I screenshot it, just had a few tickets left. So curious to see if there's enough space there to go 5 rows deep. Jersey City, so that's the J Cup. I wasn't following ticket sales trajectory there. Interestingly, in the summary, we know that they were coming to Dallas on February 23rd. I don't know if they specifically had announced the venue up before putting up this image. Gillies nightclub. So that Gillies Dallas. So that had been, I don't know if they had been there specifically before, but we had seen different promoters use that venue before. I think one was MLW. March 1st in St. Louis at Pop's nightclub. We talked with Brett a few weeks ago about how that might be one of the slower moving markets in terms of ticket sales, but establishing it and why it works with something like Triller Plus. And as we mentioned, March 9th and 10th in Atlantic City.
As far as the NWA is concerned, what is going on with them? What are some upcoming shows that are being brought to you by the National Wrestling Alliance?
So interesting to see like some of the ways that it's being filled out as they have their alliances. Some more formal than others, but following the Exodus Pro Colder Weather show in Cleveland that they did in December. Now, on January 13th, they have a double shows in Fort Lauderdale on the same day. So buy a ticket, come back, and so on, which is a hard sell. But NWA Paranoia, which is a great title. And they're also teaming with CCW Viva Revolution. And then the following day, so 3 shows in 2 days. The following day is their taping in Tampa. And then working with the Exodus offshoot, NWA Exodus, on January 27th.
EC3 run NWA Exodus. Interesting, obviously, him being the champ. We'll see for how much longer. But as far as Triller is concerned, no longer Fight, right? It's Triller TV powered by Fight. What's going on with Triller?
So as Triller sort of grows and expands in different verticals, including rugby and soccer and whatever else they're planning, using their social media and their platform to promote different things might be interesting, right? Like one of the things that they were highlighting was Circle 6, which is sort of a rival to GCW. Insane pain must be endured if you wish to become king, and it shows like all these death matches. So I had tweeted out, curious how often in the future an event of this nature will be spotlighted as Triller expands further into traditional sports. So I thought it was, an interesting commentary. Surprisingly, Triller liked the post, so I'm not sure if they were just happy that I shared it because it wasn't a critical post, but it was sort of a questioning post. And then as we were going to air, All Japan just announced, we know the show is around, but it was just announced that it would be on Triller, that they'd have their December 31st show. Nakajima defends the Triple Crown against Kento Miyahara. So, and I think people were speculating, right, as NXT talent is planning to migrate there, people were like, oh, okay, maybe that's why they only did one show with Triller. So clearly, like, that was too much looking into things too much with the WWE relationship. And look, they're back to doing another show with Triller.
Now, as far as OVW is concerned, they got a big show coming up. I think Mick Foley's even on the show. What's going on with OVW right now?
History will be made January 6th at Nightmare Rumble. We are sold out. Every show at the Davis Arena seems like a sellout, which is great since their announcement, not their announcement, but the Netflix Wrestlers show. We're sold out, so you can catch all the actions to pre-order the pay-per-view through OV Wrestling. So the way that it was announced, it made me curious because we know that, their show is distributed a number of different ways, but Triller is one of the ways that they distribute their show I believe, for free. So not Triller Plus, but Triller. So I'd imagine that maybe, an iPay-per-view or something like that. But no, this is a stream that they're that you buy it, like you buy a ticket, and then they'll send you a private link that's meant just for you. So interestingly, on this page, and I'm not saying it necessarily equates to sales, but this is what came up when I went to the page. So it said 12 people reserved tickets in the last 7 days. So this page was just for buying the pay-per-view. So I can suppose, and people can correct me, that 12 people purchased this in the last 7 days.
Interesting. I wonder how accurate that is. But yeah, it's all sold out. So where was it streaming? It's only streaming via like the website, though. It won't be on Fight.
Yeah, I don't know if there's other plans, but the way they're promoting this link, and then when you go to the website, it looks like you just buy this link, and apparently 12 people bought it in the 7 days since I was there. I mean, I'd imagine the most time people would buy it would be the day of. So I'm curious of going that day and getting, hopefully, X multiple amount of people have bought it. But, I don't know how many OVW fans are willing to put forth the money to a pay-per-view, right? You can watch the Netflix show or go live or watch, their wide TV distribution and say, I enjoyed that, I'm full. But am I motivated to buy a pay-per-view? I think it's certainly worth trying and maximizing it, and they can use this content in other ways. But I don't, it's hard to tell what's like what's a pay-per-view, what's like a good buy rate for a promotion like OVW wrestling.
Yeah, now it says 14. I just checked. It just said 14. But if you're gonna, to me anyway, if you're gonna order the show, which is $20, and you get the stream, and you get the private link sent to you, I'm gonna order it that day. I'm not ordering it 2 weeks, excuse me, 2 weeks ahead of time. You know what I mean? So I wouldn't expect more than a not to say that maybe it's not going to be as popular, whatever. But I just wouldn't expect a lot of people to order ahead of time. When I order my pay-per-views, it's that day.
Yeah, John, I think you have to send me a Google Calendar invite January 6th. Let's click
Yes.
on the link and we'll get a
Yes.
screenshot. But I love
Yes.
like data. So hopefully, like as we announce this here, hopefully they're not like, oh, whoever's running their webmaster, oh, I screwed up. Why are we telling people that? But I'd love for
Right.
this to remain on the website.
Yes. ROW, Reality of Wrestling. What is going on with Booker T's promotion and even some NXT crossover?
Yeah, so Booker T, as we've talked about before, he sort of has a unique relationship with WWE. Maybe too much to say, sort of like a Jerry Lawler running Memphis promotion where you can sort of like pull talent over and it's like not a big deal or whatever. But like especially talents that come out of his school and others that he can then utilize on shows. So for a forthcoming show, he has additional seating added. We just had additional seating for our next big event on Saturday, January 13th, since our original seating setup sold out so quickly. I do apologize. I know that it's a notable talent, I believe, from NXT that's coming back over that he trained. John, not to put you on the spot, do you know offhand who that is or recognize them from the poster?
Roxanne Perez.
Okay, great. Thank you. I meant to put it in my notes, but somehow
The great Roxanne Perez, yes.
Yes. So, and no offense, Roxanne. Everyone knows that I'm a little bit bad with names.
You are terrible with names, but she is very good on NXT. Obviously, she's one of the probably maybe the top girl in NXT. So it's her top female wrestler. So pretty good get by Booker T.
Yeah, and not to railroad us into a different discussion, but until probably to me, and again, obviously the very casual viewer, prior to the bloodline, I feel like the women were like killing it in WWE at all levels. Like their feuds and their matches and Becky Lynch and so on at the time. It was just so much more engaging than whatever they were doing with the men's division. I think the men have caught up now, and maybe it just depends on like the storyline and so on. And Rhea Ripley obviously is a top star now with the women, but like I think that for a number of years, like the women were really more engaging and carrying things. Now it's good to see like on both sides.
Let's talk about Harley Race's World League Wrestling and what is WON, because I know it's not has anything to do with Dave Meltzer. I mean, what's going on here? What is this WON?
Yeah, that's what I I sent our friend Matt Ryan at Catalyst Wrestling when he announced that Catalyst was going to be on WON. I was like, "What's WON?" And then like I fell into this wonderful rabbit hole of WON, which is quietly as they grow, has been distributing a number of different wrestling properties, some just on its own platforms and websites, but most interestingly to me at the moment is through various New York City public access channels. First, I thought they were only doing it for Catalyst Wrestling, and then when I looked, I saw Harley Race's World League Wrestling, and I was like, "That's awesome!" Like, WLW is on TV in New York, and I recorded the episode, obviously, when we were both out at the Garden on a Tuesday night, and Matt Seidel was on TV. So it was fun to see, and I'd love to talk to, I believe, Leland Race sometime on the show. Just they have a really good, relatively distribution network of WLW, and they're doing some interesting things. But also WON, curious to see how they continue to grow as they're building different relationships in pro wrestling and distributing some content farther and wider than you would expect.
What is going on with TNA? TNA. What's going on with TNA Wrestling?
So just circling back to what's ahead without anything necessarily breaking big this week. Of course, we know on January 13th and 14th, they'll be in Vegas, Hard to Kill, and then Snake Eyes. Just, I would say a few hundred or maybe several hundred to sound more positive, tickets moved for those shows. Then they'll be in the Orlando area on January 19th and 20th for Impact tapings. And then the New Orleans area, but more specifically Westwego, Louisiana on February 23rd and 24th. So nothing yet to the rumors that they were going to start booking big venues. Please, chill. Like let's do it one step at a time. Although I said that to Cody Rhodes before. I mean, I said it, but I tweeted it to Cody Rhodes before All Out, and I was wrong about that. But take it one step at a time. We'll get into a little bit of AEW in a moment, but right, walk before you run or whatever it is. But who is going to be this big announcement? So again, I'm feeling like Matt Riddle. What do you think, John?
I was thinking the same exact thing, but we've said this before. Never say that because it never reaches the expectations. Remember, AEW was saying they had this huge announcement, and it ended up being Christian, and he's great, and everybody loves him. But it's like, okay, that fell flat just because like you can never, like, unless Hogan is coming out of his prime, or you got Steve Austin's prime coming back, you're never going to reach that expectation that you're throwing out there. Never do that.
I would say the only way to exceed that, perhaps, and I would say this would be for like a couple of matches, just because she's so close to Trinity. But like Mercedes Moné, like just having,
that would create a buzz. Yeah,
like she's just having fun. Come out, challenge Trinity for the belt. Maybe she wins it, then Trinity wins it back, and then Trinity's even in a higher profile position than she was before, just to like help out her friend, like sort of like a Moxley type of thing where Moxley's in that position, he can go where he wants, but Monet also has to be, I wouldn't say careful, because ultimately if she comes back to WWE, nothing that she does is going to like hurt her when she's doing it in lower profile settings. But sort of like not to like overexpose, keep things special. You don't want it to be like, I was here, I was there, I was everywhere, and now I'm back with WWE, or I'm with AEW. You want to like take each thing and make it special. But a 2-match series with Trinity, I think, would get a lot of attention, would get buzz for her. Not that she needs that much, but ultimately help her friend a lot.
What is up with the Hamburg Fieldhouse? Is it going away? What's going on?
So a few weeks ago, we were unfortunately ready to say goodbye, but it looks like that Undertaker meme, like the hand from. I think I'm missing the camera. The hand from the grave, or whatever it is.
Yes.
People get what I'm saying.
Yep.
But the Reading Eagle said a deal for Union Fire Company to lease the Hamburg Fieldhouse to a local car dealership has fallen through. The arrangement would have put an end to events at the facility. So it's not over yet. Depending on who it's leased to and whatever deal can be worked out, pro wrestling may continue at the Hamburg. I hate to see old WWF venues like that go away, and hopefully this match can continue.
So, as far as AEW is concerned, even more management changes are going on. Even more originals are gone from the company. My longtime close personal friend, Rafael Morphe, tell me about him, his position, what's going on with him and AEW.
Yeah, so factually, what we know is that he held the position of vice president of live events and touring since the formation of AEW, and was responsible for setting up live event tours, booking buildings, local marketing, and other logistical responsibilities when it came to the actual booking and running of live event of aspect of AEW, or as has been reported, is departing the company to take what's been described as his dream job with Barclays in Brooklyn. Why not? It probably is. It's local to him. He's from the area. It seems like a great position and so on. However, one thing that I do want to note was that in his role with AEW, he was put in a very, very difficult position, meaning that when you're in charge of live events, it means that like you should be able to get some of the glory, even when the company is very hot, but you also shouldn't get a lot of the blame when the company is cold. But you are in the responsibility of booking venues, and it's up to your boss, who may be directing you how and when to book them. There seems to be a stubbornness to give up on booking top-notch 20,000 seat or thereabouts indoor venues, often referred to as NBA size or NBA type arenas, when you can't book, you cannot sell them out, even if you're scaling it down to a third. And the fact that AEW, right, I'm like standing a soapbox, but the fact that AEW is still doing that is an embarrassment. It's a waste of money, and it's ridiculous. It makes them look, like Jim Cornette, like at a Waffle House, or it makes them look like not the 1A, but like really people that don't care about money, and maybe I think not that they don't care about it, but they have more money to play with, and they don't have to be as careful. But why? Like, why? It's not everything you try is going to be a hit, but like, why book Newark, the same market as New York City? I know some people that go to Long Island aren't going to go to Newark, and vice versa. There are like areas outside, but like the core of that market who are coming from World's End, which has grown its number to almost 9,000 people, probably 9,000 or thereabouts by the time the show comes, to Newark, where you're going to get 3,500 people or 4,000 people, when you can book a venue that's 7,000 people, and scale it down to 4,500 or 5,000. But so like to be in that position when it's not a pay-per-view or it's not a debut in a hot market, it hurts your reputation, and it is a smart move to get out, and I wouldn't be surprised if that didn't factor in. The second is Dana Massey, right? Who was she a vice president as well? or just
Yeah,
in
of merchandising or more of
merchant?
yeah.
Okay. So the difficult thing, and not to say she wasn't deserving of the role, she's obviously done it for a number of years, and there's been some really cool merchandise and things sold and so on. So it's not like any of that should be taken away from her. We don't know the reason why. It seems like a very stressful position. We know that there was a Sting snow globe, that a photo that came out, that it has the same hairline as me at the moment, which is, I know Sting is an older person, but it just looked it was kind of a little bit embarrassing um, to see. So, but it also speaks to sort of like the cracks that are going on in the company, and I don't want to like sound bleak like I'm writing for Forbes or something about AEW, but it is curious from like a business perspective, like what's going on. We know that there was a high level production person that left recently. We know some of these top talents have been leaving recently, so it's just curious. We know the deal with Warner Brothers Discovery is not confirmed for a number of years moving forward, so it's just something curious to see. Again, I'm not whenever you say something, I'm not a WWE mark. I don't hate Impact. I want to see AEW succeed. Um, but it is things where they do need to tighten things up, as we talked about, John. Right? They're looking for a head of HR, and they need some of those issues worked out. So I might have missed the narrative, but that was my my soapbox.
Yeah, a lot of changes. QT Marshall quit as well. So, I mean, a lot of changes behind the scenes with AEW for sure. But let's wrap this bad boy up and hit the plugs. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram at 2Man Power Trip. Lavi, what do you got going on?
So, firstly, check out pwponderings.com. See the Wrestleable coverage. Check out This Week in Women's Wrestling and all the massive event coverage, especially our friend Luis Perez, who contributes a lot of that. But for myself on Twitter, Lavie LavieMarg. Check out my long form articles on linecubjobsearch.com, and check out our LinkedIn group, The Business of the Business, which now includes job listings. I recently shared a wrestling writer job as well. So for a website, not for a promotion, but we have had promotional job listings as well. So when I see them, I share them.
Nice. Awesome stuff, Lavi. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. See you right back here next week for a little business of the business. We'll see you next week, folks.